Well, kicking things off this week, of course, we're recording on Tuesday with the Memorial Day holiday yesterday on Monday, but kind of wanting to get into things here, Eric. Of course, starting with a little bit of last week, we had some decent showers that seemed that swept through a good portion of the U.S. over the past, 7 days or so. Of course, there's still going to be some problem areas that have, evaded precipitation for much of this spring, but kind of give us a little bit of a recap of, a little bit of the effects of that, as well as moving forward. And if if we can get some more precipitation, or if things could kind of settle down here, at least for the short term.
Well, what I'm worried about is they might settle down and then stay settled down for a long time. And the last time this happened was in 2023, and that was incidentally and also an El Nino year. So let me show what I'm thinking about here. The first map is looking at month-to-date precipitation stats. So most of the month was very warm and very dry in the west. And yes, at times we got some locally very heavy rain that came into like the I-70 corridor while it was drier up around I-80. That didn't mean Iowa didn't get any moisture, but it just wasn't as wet as it could have been in spring. Now, up Nebraska, west to east is an entirely different story. Then the farther south you go, we've had some severe weather, but it's been a lot of hit or miss. This has been huge for the Gulf Coast. I mean, yes, there's been some flooding rains, but they've picked up some moisture that they've needed. And then over in the Eastern Corn Belt, it's been very, very wet as well. In fact, I went over to the Indy 500 this weekend. That's just a drive from Champaign to Indianapolis. It's only 2 hours, not 200 hours, 2 hours. But that corn's just not jumping out of the ground. And we got to think about what we need to see change before we get fully into this full summer pattern. So this is what I do know. Over the next 15 days or so, we're going to be dominated by a large area of high pressure sitting here. And therefore, it's going to be dry, and we're going to watch heat, which has already been in the upper Midwest, northern plains, moving toward the upper Midwest and Midwest. While farther to the south, it's going to be relatively cold and wet. That's a huge flip over where we were throughout the end of winter into the spring time frame. But just to show you what it looks like, take a look at this precipitation and forecast from the European model. And as I play this out, you've got some places over the next 15 days and through here that are not expecting any rainfall. And it's going to be very wet to the south. They could get some good moisture up in the western plains, which is needed. And with this deep trough that's coming in, that's going to live here. It's got in there today, but it's going to stay here for a couple of days. This is going to be bringing in quite a bit of wet weather into parts of the Pacific Northwest that need it. But the reality is there's a ridge out ahead of this, of which is putting high pressure over, between Wisconsin, Lake Superior and Ontario for much of the next several days. And it's going to be quite dry because of that. And then you get into week 2, and the pattern still looks like this. All right, we got some rain here. It's a little bit wetter in the southeast, but overall still a much drier signal of what we saw through spring. So that's kind of where we are. And again, my concern is, does it just stay like this? I mean, it can. You can get into this point in June and like, pattern just gets stuck and it doesn't ever leave. So we have to ask that question. We'll do it again in a few minutes. Real quick on temperatures, though, we've needed heat to get out of the west and start moving across the country. I just looked up for parts of Indiana the other day. They're about 80 GDDs behind normal in some spots, so we need to have a few good warm days coming up. And those warm days are coming. There's no talk about frost anymore, which is nice, but take a look at these temperatures. We're talking way up there in the upper 90s, maybe cracking into the triple digits later on this week across the northern tier of the country. And this is again on Thursday, but look at Friday and Saturday. All this heat's tending to stay across the north, bringing in some much needed warmth while we're quite cool across a big section of the south. And all of that coolness is because of rain. So there's cloud cover and there's rain. Now let's flip this over to a different view. Let's go out and look at let's do the daily temperature anomalies from the European model. And here we go. That's today, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Look at that heat coming into Canada. There's quite a bit of warm weather there. But then the farther out you go, you see this pattern, like warmer north, cooler south. And that's all because of the way the jet stream's configured right now. And I'm concerned it's going to stay like this for a while into the month of June. So what do you interpret that as? Well, I don't want to talk next week and still see this same look in the forecast. If it's that way for 2 weeks, it's going to have a hard time breaking beyond that. And folks that are probably enjoying a drier stretch of weather with some heat coming in, we're going to start to get antsy if that heat doesn't begin to break at some point, or if the dryness doesn't break at some point, Dawson. So there's something to be said about this pattern and its potential staying power.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you bring it up that we're supposed to see this warm up. We've been behind a little bit for, temperature and growing degree days.
Right.
Uh, it's just, yeah, that persistence. So, I mean, here for the short term, yeah, we might need a little bit of relief, get the planting finished up and get emergence going a lot, especially with these heat units.
Yeah.
I mean, is that going to stick around? You bring up the fact of, 2023, we were looking so good for a lot of areas in terms of moisture, and then that just shut off, in an El Nino year.
Yeah, and I'm a little concerned about it because of this graphic here. So this is not one we look at very often, at least publicly, but us meteorologists look at it all the time. And what it is you see these colors that are these warmer colors, and they kind of seem to be in a configuration like that. Well, this is now, and going forward, what this is representing forward in time is this direction, is that right here we're expecting for the next, I mean, almost month and a half, stronger trade winds out of the west, which is the opposite direction they typically flow in. So that's going to push the MJO over to the Pacific Ocean and put a lot of suppression in the Indian Ocean. Now, what does all that mean? That means that the pattern is moving itself in the tropics to get established in a way that has very, very little chance of being broken down. Now, I'm going to say that, but I want to show you this. If I go back to this new model viewer that I built, let's go to the European model. And I want to show you, let's go to precipitation type and intensity. But I want to come over here to the Pacific. Now, watch as I go forward in this. There's a couple of interesting things happening. See this typhoon building here? There's a typhoon that we're watching build late this week into the weekend that could go up, toward Okinawa, for example. And then the models are taking what's left of that. So it's kind of done this, and they're going to spin it up into the North Pacific. And as they do so, this could just be, a potentially some sort of large system that's out here that could really ramp up the position of the jet stream. Now, I want to watch for that very carefully to see if it does do something like that, really get the jet stream going, leaving Japan and then moving across the ocean here. But at this stage, it is worth bearing and watching. If that doesn't happen, here's what I'm concerned about. Let's go to this graphic. The Southern Oscillation Index, you want to find a value of -7. So I'll draw a line on it. If you are below -7, you're in base state El Nino, and this is dropping off like a rock. It's down to -12. Now, if you go look, what typically happened in June, historically, when the Southern Oscillation Index at -7, guess what? Really stormy in through here and across the south, drier in that area. Doesn't that not look just like the forecast I just gave you, right, from the near term? But then what often happens is you got in the month of July, and we end up making this whole region stormier and wetter. Now, if I could make this happen, go from June into July, get some heat in here, but then cool it off in July and bring in rain, man, we will be busting yield records. I mean, it would be huge. Now, it's not good for the Northeast. It's not going to be good for the Delta, but man, through this corridor, shoot, that would be something else to be seen. Globally, by the way, just to keep you aware of this, there is some serious drought risk coming into India, which is here, Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea. I mean, this is important. And you probably saw, Dawson, I don't know if you did. Did you see the tweet that came out that was like, this El Nino looks just like the El Nino of 1877, which killed 50 million people and all of that. Have you seen that tweet go around yet?
Oh gosh, I think I saw yeah, I saw that big 50 million number, but I couldn't tell you what day I saw that and exactly what it was referring to. But yeah, it got my attention for sure.
It did, yeah. And it's nuanced, right? I mean,
Mhm.
1877 versus 2026, global food security, shipping routes, supply chain, it's way different. But I would be concerned about the risk of significant drought hitting those two areas. And just so you're aware, the two areas I just circled on the map have 2 billion people that live in them, right? I mean, you combine Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, plus probably include a little bit of the Philippines, and then add India. Yeah, you're at about 2 billion people. So there is concern in this area about the effect of the drought going forward. But back in the United States, all right, here's the temperatures right now. Watch the temperature evolve into June. We are expecting quite a bit of heat here. And then you see later into the month of July, I mean, this goes out to July the 11th. All right, we're seeing warmth, but it seems to be farther and farther back toward the west overall. And the precipitation pattern, let's go flip over to that real quick. This is the 30 days ending on July the 11th. So a little drier, in through here, but it appears to be a stormier corridor setting up like that. I don't know. Let's watch it. I think that's going to be worth noting. What I will tell you is that the longer range models, I don't think I've really fully found the summer pattern yet. Here's all of them that I like to use: European model, IRI, NMME, Climate Prediction Center. I can't look at this and peel off anything solid, except for they all want to have an active southwest monsoon. See that? And a lot of times when we have active southwest monsoon, the flow comes over the top and it storms in this corridor. I think that's a possibility this year. What I'll be watching most carefully for most of the summer is the MJO going to live over in phase 7 and 8 a lot? That's what I'm going to have to ask. And as we've talked about many times, Dawson, look how much warmer the North Pacific has gotten over the last week. The warmer this becomes, the more that heat risk, which you saw building like this, starts to come back to the west as you get into July and August. So I think that's where we're going to sit on this global picture, or excuse me, this North American picture going into the summer months here of June, July, and August.
Yeah, I mean, are we kind of getting to that time frame that we could begin to maybe have a little bit better of an idea of what we could see, moving forward here, and you bring up those sea surface temperatures too with, El Nino. Yes, it can bring good precipitation to the U.S., but we're also watching, the Gulf of Alaska, and
Yeah.
kind of the concerns in the Gulf of Alaska are not yet emerging that we got to be
Uh,
watching here, in the next month or so.
yeah, well, that's what we have. We have another month to wait on the Gulf of Alaska, but at least it's not trending where I showed you this map and it was all blue. That would be something to consider. And just so you know, like this affects the whole world. And so it's kind of neat just to step you back and show you a couple of the things I'm thinking about. When that big ridge builds in here, remember this is all kind of a connected system. Look at the ridge of heat that's building into Europe. And if you want to see what that's doing to precipitation, we're very dry in Europe and very dry in this part of Central North America because of the same features. I do want to point out to everyone though that yes, the monsoon did shut off. I mean, it's slowed down 50 days ago, and we've seen for the last 30, almost 50 days, I guess you could say. You and I have been talking about this for weeks, but this area has been very dry, yet we're not hearing a story yet from anybody saying it took down the yield. But it is raining and is forecast to rain over parts of New South Wales and Queensland, which have been deep in drought. Also, this area of Western Australia. So, if I can kind of highlight these two areas, these are two of Australia's most productive agriculture areas, and they're growing a lot of wheat. And it's just now going into their winter time frame. So, that's going to be critical to watch as well.
Can you look at Russia again? I know that was, one area that we've been looking at, a lot not too long ago, and the reports were it's a little bit cold, it's a little bit wet, and it kind of got things off to a slow start for their spring planting season.
Yeah, but I mean, you see the cooler weather now. A week and a half ago, this was all red and warm.
Hmm.
So they did pick up some heat. They're going back over cooler, but cooler through June 4th. Like, all right, well, what does that mean? That's okay. And there's plenty of rain in that area overall. So I don't know that there's necessarily going to be some sort of devastating story hitting that particular region.
All right, well, good to know for that. I think that's going to wrap up our conversation. Again, a few things to think about. Yeah, I mean, trending drier here for a little bit for the short term. Does that stick around? Can we kind of break away from that moving forward here? We're going to be keeping an eye on those developments here moving forward, and always appreciate your insights, Eric, and we'll talk next time.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Dawson.